welcome to the Sound Masterclass. As before, we're going to encourage you to ask questions as we go. At the end of the editing masterclass, you heard the the editor say, how do you tell a bad edit? You strip out the sound. And when you strip out the sound, you do realise just how important sound is for almost everything you do. And I think a lot of what we're going to be hearing from my guests, Matt Bacon, who's a location sound recordist, and Kate Davis, who is head of post-production sound at Director's Cut, one of the best edit houses there is how people tend to forget about how important sound is. But really, too many production teams think of sound as an afterthought when they're planning a shoot. So all your focus goes on the location, the interviewees, the content. Nobody notices that the chosen location is next to an airport, and I think you're probably going to expand on that. So today we've got people who are at the top of their game with a great passion for sound, and they're going to talk us through how to make the very best out of what we're doing. But as usual, we're going to find out, because it's important, just how they got into the business and what it takes to become the recordists that they are. So, Matt, should we start with you?
Sure, okay. My entrance into this industry, like many people in this industry, was not planned. I did a degree in music at Kingston, and I majored in technology, but it was more 64-channel desks, reel-to-reels, it was back then, and I had no intention of coming to television whatsoever. I had aspirations of working at Abbey Road and recording the next bands and orchestras and big bands, and as a musician myself, that's where I wanted to be. Fate had a different plan for me, and although I graduated, I got a first, still went to Abbey Road, and they said, afraid not. There's a queue of about 20 other people with exactly the same, and I couldn't be an assistant to the T-boy. So had to go back to the planning stages and think, well, what else could I do? Granted, I'd set the bar perhaps rather high, but a friend of the family said, well, they need sound in television and film. Is that something you'd like to do? So that was where I ended up. I bought a copy of Broadcast magazine, and there was a tiny little advert on the back wanting a camera and sound assistant at Shepperton Studios. So I went to apply for that, got an interview, and I arrived there with a working knowledge of audio. I had no idea about video. And I was presented with I think a 50 questionnaire, 50-point questionnaire, and I knew all the answers to the sound one. Didn't know any of the video ones, so I kind of chalked that down to experience. But I had the foresight to write down the questions, because I think, well, if I'm going to go for another job interview, I need to know the answers to these questions. So I went away thinking, no. Not got that one, but to my surprise, I got a recall and went back. I'd learned the answers to those questions and was presented with the same questionnaire at the second interview, and I got 100%. So then, to my delight, I got phoned up and got my job, and that's where I stayed for a few years as a camera sound assistant. My interest was obviously audio, so I was hanging around the sound guys more than the camera guys, and I was wide lenses. Oh yeah, okay, there you go. And eventually, the bosses said, "Okay, well, you obviously have a passion for that," and they seconded me to BBC Pebble Mill, and that's where I learnt my trade.
No way.
Yes.
That's where I was.
So you had a very although obviously you have a Pebble Mill background in common, you had a very different start, didn't you, Emma?
Yeah,
Kate. Sorry.
Yeah, so I got a job as a runner, similarly to Matt, through a family friend, put my CV on the right desk, and I got a job as a runner in post-production straight after my A-levels. So I had no knowledge of television or post-production. But I enjoyed being in this creative environment, so I worked hard and then became an assistant editor and was lucky enough to be a film assistant at Pebble Mill. And there was hours in the day when we didn't have jobs to do, so we could, sit and observe the editors. And it's an amazing skill, but it didn't really inspire me. And I felt this calling from the other end of the corridor, which is where the dubbing studio was. And so when I had any free time, I'd sit at the back of the dub and not talk most of the time. I'd just be listening to what they were doing and why they were pressing stop, what they were changing, what they were discussing amongst themselves. And I just found this environment so amazing and inspiring and magical. It was really exciting. And so they then needed a dubbing editor at some point, and they decided to train me up. And I spent 6 years dialogue editing on big dramas like Deal and Pasco in Birmingham, and then moved over to the factual side when they stopped making the drama, and then started mixing, and here I am.
Just to pick up on, you've both mentioned the word family friend. And we were talking before about how difficult it is to break into the industry. What do you think people need to be doing now if they don't have the family friend or whatever? We have an audience of people here who might want to follow in your footsteps. What should they be doing?
It's obviously incredibly competitive nowadays, and there's so many media degrees and courses that inspire people to want to get into our industry. Yeah. I mean, for post-production sound, I'd say get a job as a runner in a post-production house. Get Pro Tools, which is the industry standard software, become proficient at that, and just work hard, be the best runner you can possibly be, stand out from the other runners, and the opportunities come to you if you...
Yeah, I mean, I would say the most foremost thing in this industry you need to do is network. Although you might want to go into sound, start as a runner, start as a tech assistant in the camera department. You get to meet people, you get to speak to people. You might find that actually sound is something where you started going down that path, and actually, I'm really interested in this. And it is a team game, and we can't do our jobs individually. We can't. The product you see at the end is a culmination that every department has had a helping hand in that. So yes, start as a runner, there are facilities houses that need equipment, drivers. Productions need, runners or editorial assistants, or it gets you in. You get to speak to people, and once you've started to meet people, you'll see a path.
And be passionate. Presumably.
Yeah, be passionate. Yeah. You've got to be prepared to put the hours in. You will lose friends along the way doing 80 and 100-hour weeks. I'm afraid so. But that's what you've got to do. You've got to show yourself as being more passionate, not to the point. I would stress that not doing dangerous driving, don't fill your hours and not sleep, because that is something that the industry is
well, as this is a sound masterclass, not a health and safety.
Health and safety, yes.
Let's get into the nitty-gritty of what the job actually entails. So we're going to, as usual, show clips, and so we're going to start with Kate. And Kate's first clip is for Sky Arts documentary about an R&B singer from the 1950s. Kate, tell us what we should be looking out for and listening for in this clip.
So the clips I've chosen, the 3 clips, demonstrate the different elements to a soundtrack. So my first clip hopefully will demonstrate dialogue. And I picked this documentary. It's about a singer called Teddy Pendergrass. And I was given many different types of source material for this documentary. So there's archive footage of Teddy, there's newly recorded interviews, and there's the first bit of sound you'll hear is a journalist recorded a number of tapes interviewing Teddy when he was still alive. And there were 60 tapes, I think, in all. And the director and the editor chopped together a lot of his sentences from different tapes. So should we see the clip?
Yes, and then you can
I'll
explain what you did with it. So if we could see the first clip, please.
What I'd like to do is start from the very beginning and just kind of talk from childhood, just kind of go through my life, you know. My mother made me very independent. I walked to school from kindergarten through 6th grade by myself through 2 gang territories. My mother bought her house on 8th Street. The closest gang, you would call the MNF.
The mighty motherfuckers. And these guys were terrorists. These guys, if they couldn't get you, they would come to your house and get your family.
It was a tough neighborhood. You either had to be predator or prey. It was tough going to schools. It was just tough trying to be on the right side of things.
Do you want to party? Do you want to dance? Teddy had the bottom mouth, talk a lot of trash. He said, you know what, man? I'm going to be famous one day, and I'm going to hire you as my bodyguard. I looked at him and get away from me. Shut up. You're watching too many movies.
Teddy Pendergrass, one of the most popular singers in all of pop music. He doesn't like labels like soul or R&B or rock and roll, but the one label that's undeniable when you come to Teddy Pendergrass is that of superstar.
Thank you. Thank you.
I learned that you were ordained at the age of 10.
Yes.
Are you still a minister?
In some ways, I'm still spreading the word. In church, in black churches, the major thing is being able to stand up in front of a group of people and move them. I mean, so much so until they feel the spirit, as the spirit is to whatever your belief is. And that training and that experience, I credit it to what I'm doing today.
It was nothing but the blood of Jesus.
So, what were the challenges for that?
So many
documentary?
challenges. So dialogue to me is the most important thing in any soundtrack. It's where the story's passed on, it's where the information is, and if you can't hear the dialogue, then you might as well not bother. So I'm really passionate about punchy, clean, smooth dialogues, and with something like Teddy, because there was so many different types of source material, I needed to try and smooth between them all and make the viewer not think about the fact that there's so many different source material. So the thing with the cassettes, I mean, obviously I'm lucky that they subtitled it because some of them are very difficult to hear. But I think that clip had about 3 or 4 different tapes. So I had to do a lot of restoration work, denoising, decrackling. I had to, a lot of the tapes when they were transferred were at different speeds. So I had to do time stretching and compression to try and make him sound normal, pitch shifting him to match into the other clips, and also adding noise to smooth between them so that they sound continuous rather than all of the separate bits.
Some of that kind of background shush that we could hear.
Yeah,
that I'm
so
thinking,
I
well,
added
that's
that.
a cassette.
Yeah.
You actually did that.
Yeah, I added an
Yes.
extra layer, and there is a lot of that inherent in the source material, but
Yeah.
I added another layer to smooth and to also tell the brain that it's from a cassette, and
Yes.
and smoothing between. So the archive, obviously, to convince the ear that that's all of the same level. Actually, loudness-wise, they're very different, but I want the viewer to not be thinking what are they saying in everything I do. It's where it's very important that the dialogue's clear.
Yes. And when you get the source material in, that had already been cut, as it were, by the production team.
Yeah.
But were you getting wild tracks? And perhaps you could just explain what a wild track is. Were you getting those extra things that helped you in your restoration work there?
Not for that project, no. So I don't know if you all know, but a wild track is something somebody like Matt would hopefully record in any location that he's filming. So it's a bit of silence, basically. So a bit of room aircon.
It's the longest minute of the day.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, everyone wants to go home, and you go, just can I have 1 minute of wild track?
Do people still allow you to do wild tracks?
Not all the time.
Yeah.
Sadly, but some productions are, you just, no, we've got to move on.
Yeah.
We're already 3 hours behind. You do have to fight your corner,
Yeah.
but sometimes you just have to
But
be
it's so
creative.
important. It's like this silence is so
yeah.
valuable to us to smooth between edits and into a sequence, car noise and...
Sometimes I have to sneak off and do it.
Yeah.
And obviously in that documentary, you had modern sound, you had up-to-date actuality sequences.
Yeah.
Did you treat that in a different way?
I mean, just to make as clear as possible. I mean, you don't need to do the amount of work on it, hopefully, if it's been recorded nicely. I mean, there was another problem with the interviews, the recorded interviews, is that the director actually did a recce 2 years before actual filming, and she'd recorded it herself incredibly poorly. And she actually came to me, tail between her legs, saying, I'm really sorry, because they'd used a lot of that sound, the recce interviews, cut in with the newly recorded stuff. And so I had like barely recorded audio dialogue that I was trying to, again, smooth into the other stuff. So it's not just about making any clip as clear as possible, or as clean, rather, as possible. It's about smoothing it all into all of the other elements to, like I say, wash over your head. Sound is so subliminal. It's, I don't want anybody to ever think about what I've done, because then I've not done my job well enough, if you notice it.
Okay, so we're going to come on to some of the things that you do that people maybe haven't noticed later. But Matt, we'll talk a little bit about location sound. What are the biggest challenges for you? And I'm just going to tell a little anecdote here, because as a young researcher working with amazing sound recordists, sometimes I have to say it was a bit of a nightmare. We'd get to somebody's house, sound recordist would say, what's that I can hear in the background? And so you'd be sent to turn off the fridge. And then somebody would start hoovering next door. Can you just go around and tell them to stop hoovering? Or there'd be somebody drilling in the street, or a plane going over. And, we used to make a joke about it. It was a bit of a pain, but at least then the recordists I were working with were ensuring they got clean sounds to bring back.
Yeah, I mean, that is our job. We strive to do as best we can. Sometimes, due to the limitations of what we're shooting, we have to compromise, and that is part of the job as well. And a daytime program, you're going to be not less concerned about it, but something over a period drama, you cannot have a plane flying over a period drama. They didn't exist. So you've got to stand your ground at that point and say, no, we've got to wait for that plane to go, or we need to do that again. But as part of the sound recordist, when you are hearing bangs and noises and things, you are self-editing. So you are knowing, okay, well, is there a beginning, a middle, and an end to that sentence, that person? If there is, okay, I'll ask that bit to do it again, or can we just pick up from that point, so they can get a complete piece at the end? I mean, the edit, there's no point having a car beep over the last word if they can't repair it.
Do you get planes and car beeps in some of the stuff you're given?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we get such really noisy sound, and like you say, the cutting between bits.
Yeah.
If there's a car going past and then they've chopped mid-sentence to another bit that hasn't got a car going past, we'll probably have to put a car pass on to smooth over it. But
there's things you can do. You can get the person that's been doing that to say that again, not from that point. Get them to say a few words beforehand, so the intonation is correct. And it might have to be that from the editor's point of view, they have to cut out to a wider shot so the lip sync is less. But they've got it.
Yes.
I think it's more important to have it and not use it than not have it in the first place.
Exactly. Okay. So, Matt, would you like to set up your first clip?
Okay.
This is from a massive shoot for an entertainment series called The Bachelor.
This is a prime time it's a dating series, which was on Channel 5 earlier this year. It was filmed in South Africa, and it's a show called Bachelor, where I think it's 26 girls all compete for the heart of one man. Some of you may have seen the series. There are other versions of the series abroad where the roles are reversed. But I was charged with supervising this series.
Okay, so we see the clip and then you can tell us how you did it.
Sure.
I've fallen in love with you.
Tonight, the business end of the competition begins.
Oh no!
As the Bachelor enters the final stages of his search.
There's so much mixed chemistry in my brain that I literally feel like I could be the world's worst professor of emotion.
But of course, there's still time to drop in a bombshell or two.
Who are these guys?
Oh my god! Is that Mark?
Late night at the girls' villa.
And then there was 7.
The latest rose ceremony has just finished.
Lucky number 7, that's it.
Only the girls who Alex presented with a rose have made it through to the next stage.
So although there are still 7 girls left, it's only going to get more intense, it's only going to get more emotional. I have the responsibility to look after my own heart and remember that I'm here not to make friends, but to find somebody that I can love and will love me back. As frustrating as it is, because I want to hang out with all of them, I have to get that number down to 1. But it isn't easy.
With hard choices to make ahead, the Bachelor isn't finished with the surviving girls just yet.
I'm taking 2 of you on a double date tomorrow to see Africa from dizzy heights.
Oh! Oh!
So, Charlotte and Frankie,
Yes!
will you come on a double date with me tomorrow?
Yeah!
Amazing.
Yeah!
Excellent.
Today's date is taking place hundreds of meters up in the mountains above Cape Town.
Careful! Oh my god.
The only way down is a series of death-defying zip wires crisscrossing a treacherous ravine. But the real danger for Charlotte and Frankie is by the time they get to the bottom, Alex has to hit one of them to send back to the UK immediately.
You made it.
Look at here!
Hey guys.
Hello!
You all look amazing.
Oh, so good to see you. Oh, so
Thanks.
good to see you.
Good to see you too. Well,
This is amazing. What of you?
what do you reckon? This is our playground for the day.
Wow. Incredible.
What do you think?
So exciting. Unreal.
Awesome. We're going to get to know each other as well along this whole journey, so I've got some questions lined up for you at special points during the day.
Oh, wow. Cool.
You excited?
Yeah, really.
Let's have some fun.
Let's do it.
Sweet, let's do it.
Go, babe. Yeah. Hey! I'm going. Woo! Oh my god! Hey! Yeah! Whoa! That was amazing!
Quite a lot to talk about here,
Yes,
I think.
it was a very fun shoot, I have to say, and I would say mainly, partly because of the people I was working with. It was a great crew.
So you say you're a sound supervisor, so tell us how many people you were working with in your team.
I had a team of 4, and then sometimes 5 on that series a day. So my role was to initially spec the program. So obviously we had to go over to South Africa and visit the locations and
plan how you
and plan how it was going to go. Yeah. So we had a format. We had the format, which was from the American show, and I was given a list of requirements that they wanted, and some ideas they wanted to do. They wanted to go zip lining. They wanted to go. We went swimming with sharks. We went scuba diving. They went a manner of dates, and that was the format of the show. So we had to visit a lot of these during the recce.
So you had to do a kit list that would cover every eventuality.
So once we've been over there and done the recce, I was then able to go back to production and say, okay, well, this is the equipment that I think you need. And doing it in South Africa rather than here in the UK presented a number of challenges, one of which was make sure we had enough equipment. So I had to kind of take what they were told me, and they don't always tell us what they're always going to do. So you have to build in a bit of contingency and have lots of backup plans. When they go, oh yeah, actually, we're just going to do this today because that's fallen through. So we had to take all the equipment with us, pretty much. We did hire a bit of it locally, like cables, but we had to run it all here, test it all here, have it running, send it out.
So on location, this is divided up. You've got the scenes in the house with the girls.
Yes.
Are all the girls individually mic'd?
Yes.
Talk us through how you do that, and then we'll go on to the other challenges.
The various scenarios that we were presented with. So they had a house that was a base, in which the girls lived. The bachelor lived in a separate house elsewhere. But the task I was given is that they could go anywhere in the house in the grounds. So I had roughly about an acre that I had to cover. So each morning the girls would wake up, we would say hello to them after breakfast, and then they would be mic'd pretty much soon after that. So we had roughly about 50 channels of radio mics flying around. And they could literally go anywhere.
I'm watching Kate's expression. Were you mixing those 50 channels as you went, or did they come back as discrete tracks?
Well, we had a discrete track. So we had a big in our gallery. We had a giant multi-track mixing desk, which received all the radio mics wherever they were. We had things called zoners, which are little antennas that are dotted around the house and grounds, and they all fed back to the gallery. Which allowed, so a bit like a mobile phone mast, as you move between mobile phone masts, your mobile phone is linked to the next one, and so your call doesn't drop. And it works in a similar way with the radio mics. So we could always hear them pretty much.
Apart from,
yes, when they decide to do something that no one expects to do. There was a time when one of the girls decided her emotions had got too much, and she wished to leave the show. No one expected it. No department was expecting it, so that we had no lights, we had no cameras out there, and obviously we needed sound out there. So as she departed the house and walked towards the front gates, yes, a member of my team had to employ Plan B, which was a mixing bag, which we'd normally carry on a location. He ran out with the recorder. It was all preset with a lot of the receivers, and he ran out and hid in the shadows as the cameraman ran out with lights and things. That's it. So, yeah, sometimes you have to think on your feet.
Let's talk about the zip wire, because that was a particular challenge, wasn't it?
Yeah, so that was particular. So we had 3 people zip lining down the mountain, and we couldn't really run out any cables because we didn't have enough length on the cables. So we're relying on the radio mics and the production team, because they want to produce the story. They need to hear all the comments. So you can't have the lead bachelor whispering sweet nothings to somebody when it can't be filmed. So we had to make sure that we could hear him all the time. So they had onboard recorders, which they were body-worn recorders. So as they slid down the zip line, we knew they were always going to be recorded. So I'm a big fan of backups. But that wouldn't help us always hearing him. So we had to have a recordist at the top and the bottom of the zip line. So as they went down, we were listening to them, and then they went on to the next recordist, and then that person had to go to the next one, and so on and so on and so on and so on. So it needed a bit of pre-planning, and when it comes to shows like this, pre-planning is everything.
And when you get the unexpected, as it were, you said that they didn't tell you about the boat, for example, that you had to do a boat scene. The pre-planning entails you think, oh, well, I actually packed that as a backup that you can use.
Yes, they had certain tasks that they thought they were going to do, and I suppose going over to South Africa, it was likely that water was going to be involved. So yes, the part of the additional equipment that we took would allow us to have hydrophone mics, so you could put microphones into the water. You can't hear dialogue, of course, but it required on good crew. I mean, I had to choose and select crew that would be up to the challenge, and I enjoyed working with. One of which did a lot of the boat and the dating and the dates, and he spent a lot of his time stood on the side of a boat holding a big long boom pole. And it can be tiring in the sun, especially. So that's how we got most of the dialogue when they're in the water.
Okay, I'm going to put the lights up and say, anybody fancying being that person standing on the side of the boat in South Africa holding the boom? Yes. Do we have any questions at this stage, either on location, recording or dialogue, before we move on to the next clips?
Hello.
Hello.
Firstly, that show looks a little bit grim, but I appreciate the challenge of all the sound that had to go on. When you say you had all those girls and all those microphones and all those little bits, how many people were controlling the sound that whole time? Like, was it one person doing however many girls?
Yeah, no, so it all came back to me. Thank you. So all the mics came back to me on a big mixing desk. And the way my brain works, I work A to Z, so I knew that anyone, I don't know, Bethany would be up here, Susan would be down here. My role as the mixer on that show, everything was isotracked. So every channel was recorded individually. So we never lost anything. But part of the role as a sound mixer is to produce give the edit a working mix, because they don't have the time to go back through every single individual channel. And part of the skill is jumping between shots, and you've got to so the editor or sort of the director will be switching between cameras. So I would watch effectively a TV show. I would watch it, and then my role is to go, oh, that's Alex in that clip. I better fade her up. But then also having that forethought, and that I know Bethany and Claire's also in that room, and they might talk to. So those mics have to be ready to go. But if I miss anything, it is on the ISO track.
Okay, when you get material, is there somebody between you and Matt, so the editor, as in the last session, they'll have done a first pass over things, will they?
Yes, so there's so many tracks that go to the edit nowadays, so they'll lay up all of what Matt's provided, so maybe 8 dialogue tracks will be laid up in any sequence, and they will hopefully go with the mix track if the nice job has been done, or all the isolated mics will be there as well, so that they might automate between those if they're better recorded if the mix isn't working for them. So yeah, I want them to put everything on the timeline, because if it's not there, it won't come to me. So the amount of times we get sound and we're thinking there must be, I can see a radio mic on them. It must be there somewhere. Yeah, they're completely off mic. So we'll ask somebody to fish it out, and sure enough, it'll be there, but they haven't laid it up.
Right, okay. So you're kind of the court of last appeal, really. And
yeah, absolutely, yeah.
Okay, we're going to move on to your next clip, Kate. So set us up and tell us, there are two different productions here put back to back, but they're all roughly about the same thing.
About sound effects, yeah. I've been a bit cheeky and picked 2 clips, but I wanted to demonstrate different uses of sound effects. So the first clip is a clip of an animation called Apple Tree House, which is a kids' drama that was on CBeebies this year. And obviously with animation, there is no sound. So that's more of an obvious demonstration of how we bring something to life with sound effects. The other one is the pre-titles of a programme called Climate Change the Facts, which went out a few months ago. And just listen out for the sound, basically, what's on those, the shots, the archive shots, and then I can tell you what we did.
Okay, let's see the clip.
Would you like to hear it?
Yeah.
Lola was a happy sheep who spent her days playing with her sheep friends. One day, the lions came by for a visit. The lions were very cool and majestic, and very different from Lola's sheep friends. Lola was desperate to play with the lions, but the lions weren't interested. So next day, Lola decided to dress like a lion and went to play with them. But every time Lola tried to roar, she just went. The lions thought this was strange. And so did Lola's friends. Eventually, Lola had no one to play with. She was lonely. So she ran back to her old friends, but the sheep didn't want to play either. Until Lola realized she was still dressed as a lion. Lola decided to dress like a sheep again and started to play the games she loved to play with her sheep friends. They had more fun than ever. And do you know what?
What?
The lions became intrigued by the sheep having so much fun, and they decided to join in the sheep games.
You know, I think I may have let you down by not going to the storytelling.
Not at all. I've noticed you've not been your usual self lately.
We've had some hot days this summer, but nothing like what we're going to get into starting tomorrow.
Today, the mercury hit a scorching 35 degrees Celsius. Temperatures are set to rise even further this week and could even break the all-time record.
Right now, we are facing our greatest threat in thousands of years. Climate change.
For a long time, climate change was something that scientists were predicting that would happen in the future. But that's no longer the case.
What we're doing right now is we're so rapidly changing the climate. For the first time in the world's history, people can see the impact of climate change.
Greater storms, greater floods, greater heat waves, extreme sea level rise.
All of this is happening far faster than many of us thought possible.
Scientists across the globe are in no doubt that at the current rate of warming, we risk a devastating future.
It's difficult to see how the population of the world will actually feed itself.
It's happening in your world, it's happening in my world.
Time is running short.
There's still time, but there isn't much time left.
The science is now clear that urgent action is needed.
We are at a tipping point. We can change history right now.
What happens now and in these next few years will profoundly affect the next few thousand years. What can be done to avert disaster and ensure the survival of our civilizations and the natural world upon which we depend?
It's our future and we can't just let it slip away from us.
Bit
Starting
depressing.
yeah. Pretty portentous stuff.
Yeah.
So we'll start with the animation. Obviously, no sound at all with animation. So
No
how do you
sound at
start to
all.
build it?
By basically, I mean, looking and bringing it, but putting a sound on everything you see, or maybe not every single move, but, you know, the little girl sheep doing ballet at the back, you know, but I asked my assistant to put like a little noise on all the steps. So it is putting a noise there for everything that you see, basically, to bring it to life. And yeah.
And are these noises that are in a sound library,
Yes,
or are
we've
you
got
actually
thousands and
ever
thousands.
creating them yourself?
We are a lot, yeah.
Talk a little bit about that.
So I don't know if anybody's ever heard of foley, but foley, I think there was a chap called Foley, which is where it got his name from, but it's the recording of the human sound effects. So for any drama, big drama film, they will actually have a Foley pass of sound effects when a couple of people will stand in a big room and they have every single floor surface, like a little square of floor surfaces. So they'll have like a concrete and some fake leaves and grass and pebbles, and they will watch a big screen with the action on it, and they will record the sound live. So, I mean, they're so experienced, they're just like standing there going in sync to the pictures, and things like picking up glasses and putting them down, those kinds of. So we don't have a Foley setup where I work, but I will task people with recording stuff. That's quite fun. I've just done, this week I'm doing a documentary, Ant and Dec's DNA journey.
Oh yes, I've seen the trails for that.
Yeah, it's really good. And there's one sequence when they're in a graveyard and one of them is stroking a gravestone. So I tasked one of my assistants, I went into the other studio and one of them was with the microphone with like some big thing like stroking the grave. So
what were they stroking?
It was a speaker, I think.
A speaker.
Yeah. So yeah, we do it. It's often quicker to do it, to record it live than it is to be trawling through and trying to find the right sound.
Yeah, and then this huge, massive library you've got of effects, how are they categorised? I mean, so obviously the sheet presumably was straightforward, was it?
Yeah, I can't remember where we got the bar from. I was trying to think it might have been one of us doing the bar, but
it's fun working with you, isn't it? Stroke a gravestone and speak like a sheep.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we all feature in Apple Tree House somewhere. I think I was a hamster in one of the episodes. Anyway, yes, so the massive sound effects library, and it's all on keywords. You know, they're all in folders, but we don't, like in the olden days, the BBC had hundreds of discs, you know, actual vinyl back in the old days, but then CDs that were, you know, BBC disc number 1 and 100 and whatever, and they're now just files on our computer, so it's all on search word, and yeah, we've got thousands and thousands of them.
So let's move on to the Attenborough piece.
Yeah, so that was just, I wanted to demonstrate that so much work goes in that you hopefully will never notice. So, you know, every one of those archive shots had probably 2, 3, 4 sound effects on to make it sound like it was recorded with the pictures. So with any kind of archive material that editors put into a sequence, if it was from an old program, then it would have old program sound on it. So it's unlikely that there would be clean sound effects on. So yeah, everything we do has multiple layers of atmospheres and spot effects to try and make that feel real. And obviously with the climate change documentary, it's about making the viewer feel the extremes of the weather. So the rain and the driving rain and the wind, all of that was, you know, me trying to push through a sound effect to make it feel real and to make the viewer feel, you know, the anxiety of what's happening to them.
So most of those pictures come to you mute, or do you take the original sound off? They come to you mute?
If it's there and it's good, then we will use it. I mean, I don't know if you spotted the one where the truck falls over on the motorway and there is actually somebody's voice on it, because I think it's mobile phone footage. So we have the sound is in there, but we put on a crash. I hate to break the illusion, but you know, we put on the metal skidding across the motorway and the smash as it hits the deck. There's the bit when there's I think a door flies across the screen. That's got a sound effect that's like slamming into the other side. In fact, probably 3 or 4 sound effects. So yeah, we obviously, if it's there, then we'll use it if it's good, but it's all layered up.
The editors this morning were talking about their moral duty, not moral with a capital M, but where do you draw the line in putting on a sound that enhances something to actually putting on a sound that makes it sound something it isn't?
I mean, the programmes I do, it's not really a contentious issue. Some directors do insist on only using real sound if they've had good sound recordists that have done wild tracks and stuff. But people don't notice what we do. You know, it's meant to just feel right. So, you know, unless I'm changing the meaning of something, or we have a problem with birds sometimes. You know, we'll put a bird sound effect on and somebody will complain that bird wasn't in the north of north of Scotland. I used to get there was a complaint letter on Coast when I worked on Coast, but that's the only thing I would say, you know, we have to be careful of.
Yeah.
You don't want to be putting the wrong noise on. It's got to feel right and come to life, really.
Yeah. And final question, obviously the music played quite a big part in the
Yeah,
second
it was
clip.
composed.
Tell me a little bit, that was composed music?
Yeah, it was specially composed for that
Yeah.
film, a great composer. So he'd composed to picture, and so the edit will have the composer on board from early on, and so they'll be supplying guide tracks, and then when the program is locked, they'll rescore it to the final pictures. I think it was quite frustrating for him because he locked quite late, so he was trying to rescore very late in the day. But music is obviously incredibly important and driving for that sequence and the changes in tone and emotion. But obviously my job is to, you know, like I say, all the elements of the soundtrack, everything's got to do its job. So I wanted that music to punch through and not feel apologetic, but obviously all of the other elements had to come through and do their job as well.
Because there's been quite recently quite a lot of criticism about the levels of music blurring dialogue.
Don't get me started.
So is this something you sit and shout at the screen at home, do you, Matt?
Yes, occasionally. But I mean, I on those instances that came up, I think a lot of the time the recordist isn't to blame. A lot of the artists do.
Yeah.
You can't hear what they're saying, and I suppose part of your role is to go, look, I'm very sorry, we can't hear them. I'd like another one, but often you are overruled. So you know, write them in your notes.
Yeah, I think people often think like it's often billed as the music's too loud. I get a lot of directors saying, you know, don't push the music too loud, but it's got to be the right mix. It is mainly about dialogue clarity, not music levels.
Yeah.
So, you know, if you've got a presenter that's got a really strong accent, that can be difficult for people to understand. You know, I want my music to do its job, but like I say, dialogue has to be the king. It has to be the thing that people are concentrating on without, you know, it being like, oh, what were they saying? So,
sometimes a low level can draw people in.
Yeah.
I mean, you don't have a sad scene and everyone's shouting at each other. You know, life doesn't work that way. You have loud conversations, you have quiet conversations, and sometimes that separation from the noise can actually can add to the dramatic effect. I mean, on that matter, we've just had Halloween, and a good example, I would encourage you all to go back and watch the scariest film that you know with the sound off, because you will then realise how much the sound contributes to that footage. You can watch a scary movie in silence, and you'd be more afraid of it without the picture. If you just heard it and not see the picture. So sound plays an important role in television and film.
Yeah.
Let's go on to your next clip, Matt, which is obviously a much simpler setup here.
Right,
and
yes.
much more, if you like, the kind of ordinary meat and potatoes of the day job.
Absolutely.
So tell us, set it up, and then we'll see.
So this is a show called Garden Rescue, and it was a BBC daytime series. I think it's still on. I haven't done any in a while, but this was from series 1, and I was the location recordist on it. And unlike the Bachelor, where I had a team of people working with me, this one is just me, which is pretty much what we all, majority of the work that we get. And with that, you take on the responsibility of everything. You've got to think. You've got no one to fall back on and go, oh, did you press record, and did you? So you've got to look after things like the timecode. The timecode is an audio signal which allows the synchronization of all the equipment. So each piece of equipment will have a timecode box on it. So the camera would have one, the sound would have one. So it allows that when they get into the edit, they can use that information to line them all up on a linear timeline. So this show had 2 cameras, 1 sound man, and not as many radio mics. I think I had 5 or 6 radio mics.
Should we have a look and then
so
you
yeah.
can tell us how you did it?
With her can-do attitude, love of simple gardens and decades of experience, Charlie Dimmock is one of Britain's best-loved gardeners.
Looking good, boys.
But the new kids on the gardening block are the Rich brothers.
We want to be the brothers that change people's perceptions of gardens.
Winners of multiple medals at the Chelsea Flower Show.
Oh, good turn. Amazing, isn't it?
The boys have become known for their dramatic outdoor spaces. Now these 2 different generations of gardening are going head-to-head.
I know they've got a gold medal, but I can come up with a few ideas.
They're meeting frustrated garden owners across the country.
The photos made it look tiny. It is, isn't it?
I'm sure you've seen larger.
I don't know what to do with it.
And will each pitch them a design based on their needs and budget.
It looks really exciting.
It doesn't look like it could be our garden.
The winner
Ta-da.
brings their design to life.
Hold on.
Sweet, isn't it?
And the loser has to help them build it.
Oh, I'm getting irritated now. We're sort of faffing around.
This is what happens.
Does he ever get irritating?
All the time.
When different styles collide.
Who chose these?
1, 2, 3.
This looks like your design.
Yeah.
To turn garden dreams into reality.
Wow, open your eyes.
Wow. It's amazing. It's beautiful.
So yes, this is it was a daytime gardening series. We filmed up and down the country, and my role as the sound man on location was that I had to radio mic all the presenters up and our contributors whose house we were invading, and we had I think 2 or 3 days to basically transform their garden, but from a sound point of view, I had leaf blowers. Babies crying next door. I had building work going on, and that's some of the things we couldn't foresee sometimes. So the word compromise came up quite a lot.
The daytime show, obviously budget's much lower, back to the big budget, big format, international. This is down to earth. So.
Yes. I mean, it presented different challenges. I mean, from a crew point of view, it was myself and 2 cameramen. They would often film different things at different times because we were on a time frame, and we had to film things being offloaded from a skip whilst they're planting a tree in the garden. So I had to sometimes position myself in between these 2 cameras in order to get radio mic reception. I didn't have all the fancy zoning which I had in Bachelor. So I then often would have to contribute from an editorial point and say, look, you've got to wait and stop doing that. I can't do this until we've done that. And also, from a sound point of view, you're the eyes and ears of the cameraman. We had lots of power tools. There were holes that were dug in the floor. So the cameramen are often very absorbed into what they're filming.
Preventing the cameraman falling down the holes.
Yes. And that's part of the role. You've got to befriend them and say, get a beer in the evening from them and to say, oh, I did save your ankles and career. But no, so that's part of it. It's part of the team game. It's more of a team. I feel more involved in shows like that than I do perhaps in The Bachelor, where I'm removed. As a supervisor, yeah.
And do you actually work in teams? So is there a camera person who you often work with because you've built up that relationship?
I don't. A lot of my friends do work in a pair. There's usually sometimes a cameraman and a sound man who pair up and go on and work from show to show to show. I've never found that, I must admit. But it is down to relationships, as we were touched on at the beginning. It is how you get the next job. A part of the role is knowing how the equipment works and the theory behind it, and that is important. I don't want to take that away, but a very important element of the job is being nice and getting on with people and being a team player. And I know that's perhaps oversaid, but it's true. If you get on with people and people like you, you'll be hired on the next job.
Yeah. You mixed quite a lot of garden rescues, Kate.
Yes, I did mix
a few of
What
those
challenges
back in the
did you
day.
get on a low budget thing like that? What were you?
We had a really tight schedule for the garden rescues. It was track lay and mix in a day, so we'd kind of do like a big sort of decrackle sort of batch fade edit on all of the source clips, and then just start mixing. So
yeah, we were presented with all kinds of. We had snow, sleet, rain, and sometimes you just have to go, right, that's what we've got.
Yeah.
You've got to go with it.
And so there's a certain amount of compromise as to...
Absolutely, and we always try to think, imagine what situation you guys have been in. It's if you're up against it, they are just, like you say, it's happening, isn't it? It's as live. It's like you're not going to go and get them to put that fence post in.
The reveals on the end of each episode, so when the people's gardens who we've either destroyed or made better, depending on the view, they are brought out and shown, and that is it's shot as live. So everyone's like, the nods. Are we all ready? Everything's checked. Is there fresh discs in the cameras? Have I got enough batteries in the radio mics? They're little things, but the last thing you want, and the winner of tonight, because you can't do it again. You can't do it again. So the reveal has to be, captured, and you only get one shot.
Yeah. Okay. Kate, your last clip. Set this up for us.
My last clip is a very different show. It's a show called Travel Man with Richard Ayoade. And this one I just wanted to demonstrate how useful music can be. So obviously we talked about music levels. Levels have to be right, but on Travel Man, the editors work very hard at positioning the music well so that I have, something nice to fade up. And you can make such a difference by moving music by a few frames here and there and dialogue around the music. So, so...
Well, let's watch the clip and then you can tell us what you tinkered with.
Okie dokie.
What do you need to do?
I'll have a bath, probably.
You're not going to have a bath.
It's my weekend as much as yours.
The Puro Hotel is a second-unit cameraman's dream, showcasing local art, an in-house bakery, and this attractive timetable.
Do you have complimentary board games, by the way?
Yeah, we have.
You have Buckaroo?
Buckaroo?
Oh, I don't think so.
I only really play Buckaroo, so I'm out.
Connect 4 or Twister?
Yeah, we have Twister.
We have Twister.
Yeah.
OK. Twister for one.
OK.
151,
Yes,
and as soon as possible. Thank you.
OK.
Is it possible to have it there before I arrive?
Yeah.
Great, thank you.
OK, thanks.
Brilliant.
With 228 competitively priced rooms, ID trouser an extra 32, and secure the executive suite.
It's unmistakably Polish.
While Joe has a breakdown.
Levanoga, yellow. Prava Rega, blue. I remember it being more difficult.
This is a fun episode of Columbo.
Hello, mate.
How are you?
I'm tired. Been playing for ages.
Who won, by the way?
It was a draw.
OK. I'll see you downstairs.
Lest lethargy derail these fact-ent events, we crank up the incidental music and head to Europe's largest medieval square, Rynek Główny.
You wouldn't hire that extra again, would you? Drawing focus. What a square! 40,000 square metres of it.
I love it.
1257 it was designed. And it's one of the first on the UNESCO World Heritage
And it
Site
has not dated.
list.
Thanks for bringing me.
Cloth Hall.
Yeah.
700 years in business.
Cloth is one of my favourite words, actually.
Is it? The Basilica of the Holy Virgin. 13th century, the most important church in Krakow.
Quite a lot to take in.
And Adam Mickiewicz, Poland's preeminent poet.
Do you have to say his name like that?
You don't have to, but if you're not quite sure of the pronunciation...
You just style it out. Yeah, let's keep it in.
Do you know what also happened here, as of 1994?
What?
Dachshund Parade. Sausage dogs, dressed up. Imagine the fun you can have.
When's that? Tell me it's today.
It's not today, sadly.
Ah, fuff.
That's right.
I'm going to need to sit down.
Let's do it over there.
There's a lot of low-flying birds.
Before we go the full Tippy Hedron, we power stride to a pre-booked baking workshop to tackle Krakow's sig salty snack.
We're going to learn how to make obwarzany krakowski. It's a precursor to the bagel. It's in here.
The precursor to the bagel?
It's a precursor.
I don't
It's
know what
like
you
the
mean.
Hobbit version of
okay.
the bagel.
So what did you move about there?
So with music, it's obviously about timing. So I moved a lot of the voiceover so that you can get those phrases through, because you don't want to be, like, your ear will be a bit confused if you've got, like, too many things going on at the same time. So if I can move the voiceover by a few frames to let a nice music phrase go, push through, then you're letting all the elements do their job. So obviously with, like I say, the editor positioned that music, so I just had the joy of turning it up really loud when I had the opportunity between bits of dialogue. But, I do quite a lot of that, sort of moving dialogue around if they're not in vision. We do things like compress the dialogue a tiny bit to make a room for that element to come through there. So, we don't just mix what we're given. I do quite a lot of work to make the timings work nicely.
And obviously the pigeons were a running gag there. Did you add the pigeon wings?
Yeah, we put an extra flap on to make it make that more of a moment.
And location-wise, if you were doing that, how much would you be looking at, particularly?
I didn't do that show, but yeah, I would have liked to do that. It looked quite fun. Yes, from a location point of view, I suppose you've got the two gentlemen radio mic'd. You would have a boom to catch some effects. Ideally, a stereo boom. Ooh, I know, exciting.
Don't get many of those.
They missed the pigeons.
So you'd have that sort of at the very minimum. And you'd probably do a wild track if you had the time. I suspect.
Which won't make it to me.
Which probably won't make it to you, yeah. But I suppose more from another point of view, so from a comms point of view, that is part of our job as well.
Just explain a little bit about that.
Communication. On a show like that, I imagine that the director would have a set of headphones on. So the mix that the location recordist is mixing on his or her location mixer would be sent to the director so they can hear the dialogue. So when you're doing the wide shots, or when they're walking in tiny and they're chatting away, the director wants to be able to hear that dialogue, which they wouldn't be able to do unless they were walking next to them. So a lot of our job is providing the communications. I doubt they had any in-ear
presenter.
If fold back, but that would be something you could do. So if you wanted to aid the communication between the production and the talent, but that is all encompassed in our sound recordist role.
Do you ever get anything unexpected on a track, Kate? So you said you once overheard somebody discussing what a weekend they'd had.
Oh, crikey, yeah. Yeah, quite often. I mean, you must have it a lot on location.
It's all going to go in my memoirs. Things that I've heard and forgotten.
When they will shoot cutaways, obviously, let's take Coast, for example. Cutaways of waves crashing, and I'll ask for the source sound if it's not there, and I'll hear the director talking about what they did at the weekend and discussing what they're having for dinner. But that means that I have to then put a wave sound effect on that shot. So it creates a lot of work for us if the sound recordist hasn't been able to get clean sound.
Quick anecdote. One of my first junior positions was on a puppet show called The Hoobs, which is, I think, still on Channel 4 in the morning if you're up. And we had that classic, I'm trying to think, what's that film, Naked Gun moment, when one of the puppeteers decides to visit the lavatory. It was being broadcast around the studios at Elstree, and my sound mixer at the time was off doing something else, and as the assistant I was running into the sound to just bring everything down. He didn't know where it was, but we didn't want to hear it. But
turn off mics when you're ever having a down moment.
Oh yes, and discretion is part of that. The talent are aware that they're wearing red mics, but people you put microphones on who don't usually wear them are not aware that they're saying inappropriate things, perhaps, or that you're hearing those appropriate things. And your discretion as a sound mixer is to, do the right thing, really, and press. If you think, oh, this is not something I should be recording, I press stop.
Okay, let's go to the final clip.
Okay.
Set this up. It's about football.
This was a show I did in 2012 for ESPN, who Budweiser sponsored a Sunday League team in Wembley Football Club, and the concept was that if they ploughed enough money into them and gave them enough stars, including Terry Venables, who's one of the ex-England coaches, could they make it to the FA Cup final?
Okay, let's see the clip.
Ian's picked two teams as he wants them, the legends and the players that's been here, and the new players from other leagues are all involved. So it's basically just getting involved and getting acquainted with each other.
Nice day for it. It's
Good,
not raining.
we'll give it some gun.
Well, everyone's buzzing. I mean, we was looking for promotion last year. It didn't quite happen, but obviously that's the aims for this year, and to try and get as far as we can in the FA Cup.
I'm looking forward to playing in the FA Cup. It should be a good challenge. This whole process of trying to build something here at Wembley and myself being part of that is pretty exciting.
FA Cup, veterans. Yeah.
Yes, Bish.
We can do this.
This is really the first time they're going to be playing against each other. They're going to take their fitness and the practice and their drills and stuff, all those individuals that's out there, getting together to make a team, and so that they really feel good together and they're confident.
Yeah. Darryl playing off that right.
In recent weeks, my chest was feeling tight, coughing non-stop all the time. Hopefully it's nothing major.
So that was quite fast as well, just saw two runners.
25 minutes will be fine when they run around for 15 minutes.
Yellows look brighter, mate.
Yeah.
I said yellows look brighter.
Brighter, we are. Yeah. We'll be able to find each other without looking up.
Exactly. It's a one-time life opportunity. Since I'm a striker, I'm looking forward to seeing my play as well. I'll tell my grandchildren, and I'll make sure my grandchildren tell their children as well.
With regards to new players, they look decent. So for me, new faces is needed and is a must in order to at least compete. And that's my philosophy. When I go out on the pitch, I go out there to win. No second places will do for me.
Let it run, let it run. Connor! Well done, good. Pass symbol, just give it to him. Help him, help him, help him. Who wants it?
Drive! Get in the box!
Well done, Ray. Well done, Ray. Excellent. Great ball, sir. Well done, Ray. Brilliant.
It was good fun. I'm not particularly into football, but I learnt a lot. This was, as I say, was done in 2012, and it was just the dawn of digital multi-tracking that we had on location. We would do it slightly differently now, but back then we had a team of 5 recordists because they wanted to shoot it a bit like a documentary. It wasn't set up, I suppose, a bit like Bachelor, that the people that were involved could go anywhere. So we had to mic up at times 22 people on a football pitch.
Even when they were playing?
Even when they were playing, yeah.
Right,
we couldn't do it during actual matches because that was contravened various
okay.
regulations. But for practices, we had to mic up all 22 people. And a football pitch is quite big, as it turns out. I didn't realise quite how big. And there were times it was trying to get your reception by sort of holding your hand up, trying to get your aerial a little bit of distance. But because they could go anywhere, they could come off the pitch, they could go into the changing rooms. We had to, again, planning came into it. We had to think about where those positions might be, where we'd have to put each other. And when it came to matches, I mean, you might now turn up with a kind of small OB unit or an outside broadcast unit.
So, for live sport, if you were recording a Premier
League
match, tell me.
I personally don't do sport, but the outside broadcast, you turn up with a big articulated lorry, you'd be there a couple of days beforehand, you'd run out all the cables, all your microphones are preset, they're all tested. And when you come to go...
But you've got mics completely all around the pitch.
Yeah, you'd have all around the pitch, all the referees would be mic'd. And a lot of the football... grounds now have it's all wired in, pre-wired. But we were going to quite small football pitches, and none of that was features. So and because we turn up, we'd be doing the guys that were doing it were taxi drivers or teachers. So we'd be going to their places of work before, and then coming on to a football match. So we didn't have the resources to set all that up beforehand. So we had to shoot it very much in a documentary style. And as people moved between recordists, we had to change the track names on our recorders and produce copious notes that we could hand over, which you sometimes probably don't get. And the notes about to tell the editor or presumably the sound editor what you've done. John Smith would move between, he's on track 1 on Soundman 1, but he might be on track 6 of Soundman 2 and track 3 of Soundman 4. But that job in particular relied heavily on booms, although the preconception is, it's all radio mics. And a lot of the shows now, they just, I get told, just put a mic on them, which really gets my back up. Because it seems to be some people's answer to everything. But a radio mic the sound of a radio mic is very different to that of a boom.
Presumably that's why in drama they mostly boom. Is that right?
We would probably double mic them, so they'd be radio mic'd and the scene would be boomed.
Right.
So if they're doing a shot that is maybe too wide, they can use the dialogue for that. But I mean, Kate will know better that the sound has to be appropriate to the picture. You can't have a wide shot and the sound is up here, you can hear it really well. It just doesn't work. Your ears go, that's not right. You need the traffic noise and you need those extra layers. And as a location recorder, my job is to provide Kate with as much material as she can.
And how instinctive is it, Kate?
Very instinctive, I think.
It's not a science at all.
There are sums, it has to be of a certain level, and there are things that we look at, to achieve the desired end result. But it's about feeling. You've got to trust your ears. That's what I always say is don't be looking over there at the metering. It's like, how does it sound? You've got to get your monitoring level right, and then you know how it's going to sound, and then you need to know how that's going to transfer to telly.
Technologies in the last, my last 20 years in this industry has changed dramatically. But whilst the equipment is getting smaller, cheaper, lighter, more complex, technology will only take you so far. Your ears will tell you everything. I can mix shows without having to look any levels because I've done the preparation. I've set that microphone to the required level, and I know from fading up where that point is. And if someone is too quiet, too loud in the mix, your ears balance it. They're remarkable tools, and trust your ears. I think is definitely the.
It's a good point to put the lights up and see whether we've got any questions.
Be brave.
Here we go. In the middle at the back there, please.
Hi. I'm just wondering whether you used any clip microphones in any of the previous clips, because I was wondering how well you hit it. especially during the
Yeah, so the football one, yeah, they were all hidden. The majority of shows now will say, unless it's like a panel show, they want it hidden. So there are various techniques that you can learn. I personally, I favour things. There's a new brand of mic belts called Orca, O-R-C-A. And they would have been ideal in this scenario here, you Kate, turning up today. They are hypoallergenic and they fit really well. They've got thigh ones, they've got ankle ones, they've got chest ones, and there's all manner of ways that you can hide a microphone on a person and hide the cable. Sometimes you don't necessarily have the time.
Presumably in drama, that's really important.
Really
you know,
important.
Particularly it's a period drama. You don't want to be seeing any hint of a microphone.
I mean, on Bachelor, which was the first show, clip of mine, we hid all our mics except for around the pool, where they hung them around the neck. Right. But the girls did present us with a number of challenges. Their tight dresses.
Maybe we won't go there.
No. Again, well, going back to that, we touched on earlier on. Part of that is getting the trust element involved when you're invading someone's personal space when you're micing somebody up. Orca belt's really good, and there's a wealth of options now for microphones out there. DPA do some very tiny ones, and if you can get them to actually be exposed, brilliant.
But can we address this particular question? Obviously, people out here are using clip mics.
Yeah. So
what do you do with a clip mic? Simple solutions.
Simple solution. I would get some tape. There's you stick your hair down on your head, toupee tape. It's very sticky. So you can get a bit of felt. And it's the acoustic noise, the microphone, they're very good. They will pick up all the noise. So when you're hiding a microphone, try and encourage the person to bring some soft piece of fabric. Cotton is good, but not starched cotton. So sometimes you have to liaise with the wardrobe department and say, well, can I wear a soft shirt?
So you're turning up to do a factual interview.
Okay.
And you're putting your clip mic on.
So you could hide. So in between. Oh, sorry, Mr. Soundman. So in between your buttons here, there is a gap. Search for that gap, and you can find. There's like a rubber mounts you can get for the microphone clip mics now. So with your toupee tape, you can stick that rubber mount onto the inside of the shirt. If you can get a bit of some kind of felt or fur to attach to the top of that rubber mount, that removes the acoustic noise of that microphone rubbing against the other side of that shirt.
Quite a lot of people might be shooting on their phones. Camera mic sound, or would you always encourage the use of separate sound?
I would always, encourage separate sound. Sometimes that is not possible. Documentary styles require that, you can't fit two people in there. If you can have separate sound, I think, yes, it is better.
Any more questions before we finish? Yes, yeah.
Hi. Considering how often you talked about, adding layered sounds to shots or moving sounds around, how often do you get a situation where you're just like, if we use the natural sound in this shot, it wouldn't take anything away from, the overall sort of meaning of the scene?
Do you mean, as we were discussing earlier, that sort of... Sorry, ask that again, sorry.
So considering considering that you mentioned how often you like to sound around and adding layered sounds, if you were how often does a situation come around in which you hear the natural sound of a shot, and if you were to put it in to a final scene, it wouldn't take anything away from the overall meaning of the scene?
So I think the question is really, if presumably you're talking about some of the things that you're doing yourselves, and they have only natural sound on.
Yeah.
Is that appropriate? Is it acceptable? You don't always have to fiddle with it, do you?
No, of course not. No, it's if we've got good sound, then we'll use it. But a lot of the time, we can make it better, or fill it out, bring it more to life if we add something as well. Quite often we do, and obviously it depends on budget, how much time we have to accentuate the soundtrack. So something like climate change, we had 2 days to do the sound effects. But then on something like maybe a garden rescue, when we're pushing it through really quickly, we won't have the time to lay those sounds up. So we do rely on, hopefully, the effects being there. Does that answer your question?
When you're doing your own work and you're in that studio element, you're absorbed by it, and you hear all the critical noises. I think you can overdo it. I think sometimes. I think you can be too critical. I mean, Garden Rescue, I dare say that it was on in the background, the kids were screaming and people were just watching bits of it. So the need to be quite so precise was
But I think the message is do your best on location.
Yes, you can. Yes, you can repair it.
Attention to detail.
You can repair it in the edit.
Yeah.
But it will take you longer and cost you more.
Okay. We're out of time, so I'd like to say a huge thank you to Kate and Matt for sharing their expertise.